exploring my hometown. Hey everyone, and welcome to Story-Driven English. Are you tired of dusty grammar books and boring vocabulary lists? Do you dream of understanding English naturally, like you learned your first language? Well, you've come to the right place. Today we're not just learning English. We're going on an adventure. And guess what? This adventure isn't to some exotic, faraway land, oh no. It's to a place far more mysterious, surprisingly hilarious, and filled with hidden gems. My very own hometown. You think you know your hometown? Trust me, after this you'll be looking at your own neighborhood with brand new eyes. So, if you're ready to unlock English fluency through the power of storytelling, and maybe even discover the secret to eternal youth hidden in a small-town bakery, okay, maybe not that last one, but hey, we can dream, then do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button, smash that notification bell, and let's get this story started. You won't want to miss a single word or a single laugh. Let's go. Exploring my hometown. It had been a while. A long while, if I'm being completely honest. Years, actually. Years spent chasing big city dreams, navigating bustling subways and trying to remember where I parked my ambition each morning. And then, one day, I found myself back in Willow Creek, my hometown. Now, Willow Creek isn't the kind of place you see on postcards, unless those postcards feature a slightly lopsided weather vane on the town hall and a surprisingly high number of garden gnomes per capita. Small, comfortably small. The kind of small where everyone knows your second cousin's dog's name but probably still spells your own name wrong on birthday cards. I decided on a whim, fueled by a potent combination of jet lag and a sudden craving for Mrs. Henderson's legendary apple pie, more on that later, that I would become a tourist in my own town. I mean, why not? People travel thousands of miles to see new places. I just had to travel back in time, metaphorically speaking, of course. My DeLorean was in the shop. That's a joke. I don't have a DeLorean. Yet. My first official act as a Willow Creek tourist was to wander down Main Street. It's not a very long street. You could probably sprint it in under a minute if a particularly angry goose was chasing you. Which, believe it or not, is a thing that has happened here. Old Man Hemlock's goose, Tiberius, has a reputation. The familiar storefronts greeted like old friends. Bloomfield's Books, with its slightly dusty window display that probably hadn't changed since I was 10. I could almost smell the comforting scent of old paper and new adventures just by looking at it. Next to it, the Sweet Spot, the candy store that was responsible for at least 3 of my childhood cavities. Its bright pink awning was a little faded, but the promise of sugary delight still hung in the air. I paused in front of what used to be Hank's Hardware. Hank, a man whose overalls seemed to be a permanent part of his anatomy, could fix anything. Leaky faucet? Hank. Broken bicycle chain? Hank. Existential crisis? Okay, maybe not Hank, but he'd at least offer you a sympathetic grunt and a piece of licorice. But Hank's was gone. In its place stood a sleek minimalist cafe called The Daily Grind. It had a chalkboard sign out front advertising artisanal pour-over coffee and avocado toast. Avocado toast in Willow Creek. I had to chuckle. It felt like spotting a flamingo in Antarctica. A very trendy, slightly overpriced flamingo. My stomach, however, reminded me of my primary mission, Mrs. Henderson's apple pie. Mrs. Henderson didn't have a shop. Oh no, that would be too simple. Mrs. Henderson's pies were the stuff of legend, sold directly from her kitchen window on Tuesdays and Fridays, provided she was in the mood and the stars aligned. Getting one was a quest. I ambled towards Elm Street, where Mrs. Henderson lived. The trees formed a leafy canopy overhead, dappling the sidewalk with sunlight. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that's filled with small sounds. A distant lawnmower, the cheerful chirping of sparrows, the rustle of leaves. It was a peaceful kind of quiet, a stark contrast to the constant hum of the city I'd left behind. As I turned the corner onto Elm Street, I saw her. Not Mrs. Henderson, but her house. A charming little cottage with a porch swing and an impeccably kept garden bursting with roses. And most importantly, the kitchen window was open. A good sign. A very good sign. I approached, my heart doing a little flutter kick of anticipation. I could smell it now, that heavenly aroma of baked apples, cinnamon and buttery pastry. It was the smell of my childhood, of scraped knees magically healed by a warm slice, of cozy afternoons spent reading by the fire. Peeking into the window, I saw her. Mrs. Henderson, a tiny woman with a cloud of white hair and flour dusting her apron, was humming to herself as she pulled a golden brown pie from the oven. She looked up, her bright blue eyes crinkling at the corners when she saw me. "Well, I'll be," she said, her voice as warm as her kitchen. "Look what the cat dragged in. Or in your case, probably a very fancy airplane." "Hello, Mrs. Henderson." I grinned. "It's good to see you, and even better to smell that pie." "Always a charmer," she chuckled, placing the pie on a cooling rack. "Heard you were back in town. Your mother mentioned it. Said you were looking thin. City living not feeding you properly?" I patted my stomach. "I'm working on it. Starting with one of your masterpieces, if you have any to spare." "For you, dear?" "Always." She deftly sliced a generous piece and slid it onto a paper plate. "On the house. Welcome home." I nearly floated away on a cloud of pure bliss. The pie was everything I remembered and more. The crust was flaky, the apples perfectly tender and spiced. The scoop of vanilla ice cream she insisted I add melting into a creamy river of deliciousness. Eating it on her porch swing, I felt a sense of contentment I hadn't realized I'd been missing. After my pie pilgrimage, I decided my next tourist stop would be Willow Creek Park. This was the epicenter of my childhood adventures. It had a creaky old merry-go-round that always felt like it was about to launch you into orbit, a set of swings that could almost touch the sky if you pumped hard enough, and a magnificent old oak tree we called the Storyteller, because its sprawling branches seemed to whisper secrets if you listened closely. The park hadn't changed much. The merry-go-round still creaked ominously. The swing still beckoned. The Storyteller stood as majestically as ever. I saw a group of kids attempting to build a fort at its base, their faces alight with the serious business of construction. It was like looking at a younger version of myself and my friends. I found an empty bench near the duck pond. The ducks were, as usual, engaged in their favorite pastime, quacking loudly and demanding bread from passers-by. One particularly bold mallard waddled right up to my feet, looked me square in the eye, and let out an indignant quack, as if to say, "Well, where's the tribute?" "Sorry, buddy, I said, showing my empty hands. Fresh out. Just had pie. He gave me a look that clearly communicated his profound disappointment and waddled off to try his luck with a young mother and her toddler. It was here by the duck pond that I had my first truly unexpected encounter. A voice, high-pitched and slightly wobbly, said, "Excuse me, young man, is this seat taken?" I turned to see a woman who could only be described as magnificently eccentric. She wore a flamboyant purple hat adorned with artificial cherries, a bright yellow dress patterned with what appeared to be dancing llamas, and at least 7 mismatched bangles on each arm that jingled merrily with her every movement. This was Miss Penelope Featherbottom, Willow Creek's resident artist, historian, and keeper of all things peculiar. "Miss Featherbottom," I exclaimed, genuinely surprised and delighted. "Not at all, please." "Ah, you remember me," she trilled, settling down with a series of jingles and a sigh. "It's been an age. You've grown. Less sticky, I recall. Always had jam on your chin, you did." I laughed. "Guilty as charged. It's wonderful to see you. You haven't changed a bit." "Oh, one tries," she said, patting her purple hat. "The glamours keep me young. So what brings our prodigal son back to our humble hamlet?" "Just a visit," I replied. "Thought I'd play tourist for a bit." "A splendid idea," Miss Featherbottom declared. "Willow Creek has many secrets, you know, hidden histories, whispers on the wind." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, though her bangles still gave her away. "Have you by chance visited the Whispering Willow down by Miller's Creek yet?" I had a vague memory of a particularly large, drooping willow tree by the creek, a place older kids used to say was haunted. "The one that's supposed to grant wishes if you tell it a secret?" "The very same," she confirmed, her eyes twinkling. "Or so the legend goes. Of course, some say it just whispers back all the town gossip it's overheard. Far more entertaining, if you ask me." This was the kind of delightful quirkiness I'd almost forgotten about Willow Creek. Every small town has its legends, its local characters who make life more colorful. Miss Featherbottom was definitely one of ours. We chatted for a while longer, her conversation darting from the mating habits of the local robins to the philosophical implications of a new brand of tea she'd tried, to her ongoing and so far unsuccessful attempts to teach her cat, Pythagoras, to play the ukulele. As the afternoon wore on, I decided to visit the library. Bloomfield's Books was for buying, but the Willow Creek Public Library was for exploring. It was a small red brick building, and Mrs. Gable, the librarian, had been there since the dawn of time. Or at least since my mother was a little girl. She had a strict no shushing without due cause policy, but her glare could silence a stampede of wildebeest. The library smelled exactly as it should, of aged paper, floor polish, and quiet contemplation. I wandered through the stacks, running my fingers along the spines of books. I found the children's section, a bright, cozy corner filled with well-loved picture books and dog-eared chapter books. I pulled out an old favorite, The Adventures of Bartholomew Buttons, a story about a brave little mouse who sailed the world in a teacup. Must have read it 100 times as a kid. Sitting there, in a tiny chair clearly meant for someone half my size, I flipped through the familiar pages, a wave of nostalgia washing over me. Mrs. Gable spotted me from her imposing oak desk. She peered over her spectacles, a faint smile playing on her lips. She didn't say anything, just gave a slow, deliberate nod, as if to acknowledge a returning traveler who had found his way back to a familiar port. My stomach, apparently having forgotten the monumental pie experience, decided it was time for another culinary adventure. I was torn. Part of me wanted the comforting predictability of Doris's Diner, a Willow Creek institution famous for its greasy spoons and even greasier coffee. But the other, more adventurous tourist part of me was curious about that new cafe, the Daily Grind. In the end, curiosity won. I walked back to Main Street, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows. The Daily Grind was surprisingly busy. Young people, some I vaguely recognized as being kids when I left, were hunched over laptops, sipping from large, artful mugs. The air smelled of roasted coffee beans and, well, avocado. I ordered a latte, something that would have been considered exotic space food in Willow Creek a decade ago. And yes, a slice of avocado toast. I had to. For science. For tourism. I found a small table by the window and watched the world go by. Or, in Willow Creek's case, amble by. Old Mr. Abernathy walked past with his equally old dachshund, both moving at roughly the same unhurried pace. A group of teenagers on bikes zipped by, their laughter echoing down the street. The latte was good. Very good, actually. And the avocado toast? Well, it was avocado on toast. Nicely presented with a sprinkle of chili flakes and a drizzle of something fancy. It wasn't Mrs. Henderson's apple pie, but it was a different kind of pleasant. It was a sign that Willow Creek, while still holding on to its charm, was also evolving, making space for new things. New tastes. As evening began to settle, I found myself drawn towards Miller's Creek and the legendary whispering willow Miss Featherbottom had mentioned. It was a bit of a walk from the main part of town, down a winding path that was more dirt than gravel. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, and then I saw it. The whispering willow was enormous, its branches sweeping down to brush the surface of the gently flowing creek. It did look rather mystical in the fading light, ancient and wise. I approached cautiously, half expecting it to actually speak. I stood beneath its vast canopy. It was incredibly peaceful. The only sounds were the gentle gurgle of the creek and the rustle of the willow leaves in the slight breeze. They did sound a bit like whispers if you used your imagination. I thought about telling it a secret, as per the legend. But what secret? That I secretly loved avocado toast? That I was slightly afraid of Tiberius the goose? That I was incredibly, overwhelmingly happy to be back, even if just for a little while? Instead, I just listened. I listened to the creek, to the leaves, to the quiet hum of my hometown settling in for the night. No great revelations came, no wishes were magically granted. But there was a sense of connection, a feeling of being part of something enduring. Walking back towards my family's home as dusk turned to twilight, the streetlights flickered on, casting a warm, inviting glow. Lights shone from living room windows, offering glimpses of families gathering, dinners being shared, the ordinary, beautiful rhythm of small-town life. I realized that exploring my hometown hadn't just been about revisiting old places. It was about rediscovering a part of myself. The city had its thrills, its ambitions, its relentless pace. But Willow Creek had a different kind of magic. The magic of familiarity, of community, of knowing that no matter how far you roamed, there was always a place and a pie waiting for you. My tourist adventure was simple. No grand monuments, no famous landmarks. Just a street, a park, a library, a creek, and a few wonderfully quirky people. And yet, it felt more enriching than many of the more exciting trips I'd taken. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest discoveries are the ones you make when you're looking at something you thought you knew all along, but with fresh eyes and an open heart. Perhaps, I mused, everyone should try being a tourist in their own hometown once in a while. You never know what charming secrets or delicious pies you might uncover. And who knows, maybe you'll even get a story out of it. Key vocabulary, repeated throughout. Hometown, noun. The town or city where you were born or grew up. Example. I decided to explore my hometown as if I were a tourist. Familiar. Adjective. Well known to you, often seen or heard, and therefore easy to recognize. Example. The familiar storefronts greeted me like old friends. Nostalgia. Nostalgic. Noun. Adjective. A feeling of pleasure mixed with sadness when you think of happy times in the past. Example. A wave of nostalgia washed over me as I flipped through the familiar pages. Quirky. Adjective. Unusual in an attractive and interesting way. Example. This was the kind of delightful quirkiness I'd almost forgotten about Willow Creek. Charming. Adjective. Pleasant and attractive. Example. Mrs. Henderson lived in a charming little cottage. Wander. Verb. To walk slowly around an area without a clear direction or purpose. Example. My first official act as a Willow Creek tourist was to wander down Main Street. Discover. Rediscover a verb. To find something unexpectedly or during. Search about to find something again after it was lost or forgotten. Example. It was about rediscovering a part of myself. Or you never know what charming secrets you might discover. Legend, legendary, noun, adjective. A very old story or set of stories from ancient times, or the stories not always true that people tell about a famous event or person, and signing a very famous and admired by a lot of people, especially for a special skill, quality, or achievement. Example. Mrs. Henderson's pies were the stuff of legend, or the legendary whispering willow. Peaceful. Adjective. Quiet and calm. Not worried or disturbed in any way. Example. It was a peaceful kind of quiet, a stark contrast to the constant hum of the city. Delicious. Adjective. Having a very pleasant taste or smell. Example. The pie was everything I remembered and more. A creamy river of deliciousness. Memorable. Adjective. Worth remembering or easy to remember, especially because of being special or unusual. Example. The entire day was a memorable journey back in time. Though not explicitly in the text, the concept is strong. Comforting. Adjective. Making you feel less sad or worried. Example. I could almost smell the comforting scent of old paper. Amble. Verb. To walk in a slow and relaxed way. Example. I ambled towards Elm Street where Mrs. Henderson lived. Eccentric. Adjective considered by other people to be strange or unusual. Example. A voice high-pitched and slightly wobbly said, "Excuse me, young man." I turned to see a woman who could only be described as magnificently eccentric. Encounter. Noun verb. A meeting, especially one that is unexpected. Example. It was here by the duck pond that I had my first truly unexpected encounter. Contentment. Noun. A state of happiness and satisfaction. Example. Eating it on her porch swing, I felt a sense of contentment I hadn't realized I'd been missing. And that's a wrap on our little adventure through my not-so-ordinary hometown, Willow Creek. What did you think? Did it remind you of your hometown? Are there any quirky characters or legendary local foods where you live? I'd absolutely love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments below. Seriously, I read every single one, and your stories inspire me. If you enjoyed wandering through Willow Creek with me, and if you feel like your English got a little bit better, a little bit more natural today, please do these 3 super important things. Give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Share it with your friends, family, or anyone you know who's on their own English learning journey. Sharing is caring after all. And most importantly, if you haven't already, please, please, please hit that subscribe button and ding that little notification bell so you don't miss out on our next story adventure with story-driven English. Thanks so much for watching, for listening, and for being part of this amazing community. Keep practicing, keep exploring, and I'll see you in the next story. Bye for now.